Scott just made the point.
Jefferson, you'll read to be a lot more secure, not just.
Forced to hike the minimum wage for some of their employees, some restaurants are passing the cost along to the customer and calling it fairness. Is this unintended consequence of government minimum wage laws good for you and for the country? I'm PJTV's Scott Ott. Here with me are Stephen Green and Bill Whittle. And cities across the country are seeing and sometimes approving proposals to raise the local minimum wage. Some restaurant owners, watching their HR costs go up, have decided to jack their meal prices and their wages and to eliminate the practice of tipping. As the New York Times tells the story, it's a beneficial side effect of government intervention in the markets. Yes, prices go up for the diners, but gone is the awkward dance around how much to tip, as well as the income inequality that afflicts restaurant workers in the kitchen who don't get tips. The Times says one seafood chain owner calculated that he could hike his prices 21%, kill tipping, and pay everyone more. Other restaurants tack on an automatic 20% service charge. Now, Stephen Green, it seems that waiters don't like having their tips redistributed to those in the back of the house. But if there are no tips, then service charges and higher food prices can be shared with all. How surprised are you that mandatory increases in the minimum wage have worked out so well?
I'm not surprised at all. But the tipping issue really fascinates me. There was a story, it was making the viral social media rounds over the weekend, I think out of New Jersey, and a waitress, I can't remember her name, got stiffed. And not just stiff, but the patrons actually wrote LOL on the tip line. Not because she was a bad waitress. She was doing everything she could, but the kitchen was backed up. And there's these jerks. Yeah, they had to wait a long time for their food. I think it was about an hour. But she kept their drinks topped off. She tried to keep them entertained. She kept them in the know about the fact that the kitchen was backed up. She did everything she could. She provided good service. And they didn't just tip her. They insulted her. And you know what? I've had meal experiences that were so bad that we didn't have to pay a cent because of what the kitchen messed up. But you still tip your server based on what the bill would have been if you got good service. So restaurants can go ahead and do this. You know, they're their employees. It's the business's business model. It's the way they want to do things. But if somebody still provides me with great service, I'm still going to tip them, even if they don't allow it or have a line on the receipt, because that's what you do for good service. It might be smaller because they're already tacking it into the bill, but I'm still going to do that because that's what you do for great service, whether it's the waiter at the restaurant who is earning a decent wage, or whether it's the concierge at the hotel who's also earning a decent wage. You tip for good service.
I used to work in some kitchens, and it was an unusual night when we didn't have at least one waitress in tears in the kitchen. Of course, she dried up when she went out and talked to the customer, but it was an unpleasant business. Well, the New York Times, like most champions of redistributive schemes, loves to point out the obscene profits made by business owners. For example, when Daniel Patterson first started working as a chef in the early 1980s, he said, labor used to account for about 1/3 of total costs, and owners could enjoy a 10% to 20% profit. Now, as a partner in 5 San Francisco Bay Area restaurants, Mr. Patterson says labor costs eat up about 40% to 45% of the budget, and at the same time, rent costs are skyrocketing. Patterson says even a good restaurant doing a lot of business that's popular on every level is bringing 2% or 1.5% to the bottom line. It's like a not-for-profit. But if Mr. Patterson hikes prices to make even more profit and, more importantly, to make life more fair for his employees, then the restaurant next door might undercut him and drive him out of business. Now, Bill Whittle, now that you understand basic business economics, don't you agree that all restaurants should be compelled to adopt the same wage and pricing structure out of fairness to workers?
Absolutely, yes. I'm all on board for this. The government will mandate a $30 an hour wage. All of the restaurants will go out of business, being unable to make the $30 wage. No one will be able to compete, and then we'll be left with what they want in the first place, which are state-run cafeterias where bureaucrats and an entire new army of bureaucrats will serve you your food within 2 to 3 hours, and instead of actual food, it'll be like North Korea, where there's some kind of unidentifiable matter that's served to you on a plate, and you'll eat it and you'll like it, because where else are you going to go? We got the hamburgers, you got the money. That's a McDonald's idea. No. This is essentially what they want to do. You know, Scotty, this is the thing, right? You cannot mess with the laws of economics. Just like gravity and thermodynamics, they will not be denied. Barack Obama can come out and mandate that a Cadillac can cost only $500, but then they'll stop making Cadillacs, or they'll make a $500 Cadillac, and that's not exactly what you're going to want to be driving, I don't imagine. So things cost what they cost. And when you understand that things cost what people are willing to pay for them, when you understand that when you have large bodies of people making transactions of their own free will, you will come to the price that things actually cost with a very high degree of accuracy very quickly. Any attempt to mess around with that dynamic is like trying to fly with feathers taped to your wings. You can flutter around and make a lot of noise, and there's a lot of loud crashes when you're done, but you're not going anywhere. And you can call it flying if you want to. If you own the New York Times, you can say, hey, he flew like a bird. He crashed off the building and he killed a lot of people. You know, that's what's going to happen. These restaurants are going to have to go out of business. 2%, 1% profit because labor costs are so high. By the way, let me just say one last thing about tipping. There was some business about in the articles that you mentioned about it be more fair to the people in the back and to the the chef and so on. Your story is absolutely right. Waiters and waitresses don't get tips because they're the only people that do the service. They get tips because they're the only people that have to deal with the patrons. And anybody who's ever been in a restaurant in their entire lives knows how miserable and nasty an experience that can be. And to keep smiling through that and not just throw plates down their jackets is worth paying extra for.
Well, after the show, Bill and I are going over to the Icarus Cafe to have one of those extra crispy dodo bird salads. It's delicious. You know, this story raises some questions in my mind. Would restaurant owners and their employees and even their customers be better off if the time-honored tradition of tipping were banned? Would all employees be better off if their pay were stable and not linked to the ups and downs of customers' moods? Is it fair that the servers at the front of the house can make a lot more money for the same hours worked as those who don't have direct customer contact? If business wants to be more fair to its employees, but that fairness would put it as a competitive disadvantage to other businesses, should government intervene to protect or even advance the case of fairness? Wait, I'm just getting started. Is it right that relatively wealthy people should be treated like kings, attended by servants at a feast when the people who serve them live in modest or even impoverished circumstances? Should a server who delivers expensive meals to wealthy people make more than one who brings burgers to regular Joes like us? That's just the beginning. I could ask hundreds of questions related to this particular economic scenario, and you could answer them. But most questions don't have simple yes or no answers. More likely, it depends. Your answer might not be right for me or for anyone but you. That's okay, unless you have the power to enforce your answer for everyone in your town or your state or your country. When every business switches from trying to please the customer and retain good employees to trying to please the one who makes the rules, then the experiment in customer delight is over. Innovation has died, and the success or failure of your business and of the whole economy stands on the head of a pin. One falls, they all fall. For Bill Whittle, Stephen Green, and the entire Trifecta crew at PJTV.com, I'm Scott Ott.